kind of movie we're gonna make.
You dismiss what he does. It's playful or imaginative. You could afford to be a little encouraging.
What was your favorite part?
So congratulations on the best home movie ever made. Everybody's going to want one. By the way, you're going to be solicited a lot to make everybody else's story. My first question for you is, how much of little Steven showed up as a director when you were making this film? And are there any techniques that young Steven still uses today as a director?
Well, you know, whoever that guy was, you know, I'm a different Steven than I was back then, so I had to kind of remember who I was in order to assemble this sort of coming-of-age story. But I think, you know, what showed up when I was making the film was the Steven that has perspective. So what I brought to this was memory and perspective. That's why I didn't make this movie 30, 40 years ago, because I didn't have the distance or even the wisdom of just aging that gave me a kind of, you know, courage to tell a story about my mom and my dad and my sisters and my life as a sort of alien to style, you know, kid. And you know, so I think that, you know, I would not have been able to have the same objectivity that I'm able to have today, especially after I lost my dad, lost my mom. My mom died 3 years before the making of the movie. My dad died only a year before we began shooting the film. And being orphaned, as we all eventually become, you know, gave me really the impetus to go ahead and tell the story now as opposed to a long time ago.
Did revisiting your childhood in that way give you new insights into yourself as a filmmaker now?
Just the fact how much I love my mom and my dad.
Wow.
And this film probably was a beautiful thing to bring my sisters and I even closer together than we had ever been before.
For you, I read that you said part of the way into the character was through Steven's smile. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, how you got the smile, how you nailed it, and if you want to demonstrate, I'm not going to be mad at it.
I was nervous because I didn't feel like I looked like him enough, and I just noticed that there are certain muscles in his lip that move differently than mine in how to smile. So I watched a lot of interviews and looked at a lot of photos, and then I thought, well, there's not a lot of opportunity for him to be happy in this movie. It's very anxiety-inducing. So then I kind of decided, well, what if he just has an awkward smile when he's uncomfortable? And then that could be enough that I look like him in the movie, and that's what I did.
I noticed the posture. There was a scene when you were walking into the gym where the posture was it was like little nuances that I noticed. Was there a particular, I know you've described it, making this film as being very cathartic. Was there a particular moment that you found sort of surprised you the most in terms of what the emotions it brought out in you?
Well, you know, there were many moments in the telling of the story that surprised me the most, especially in, you know, at times, in directing Michelle Williams and Paul Dano, who were playing my mom and dad, there were times when, as they were playing their characters, I started seeing a lot of my mom and dad in them. And a couple of times I only saw my mom and my dad, and I had to snap myself out of it. I'd say, you're a director, you need objectivity, you know, you need that aesthetic distance between the subject matter and your own point of view. And so I had to kind of force myself to don't get lost. It was very indulgent if I was going to get lost in a scene and start to see my mom and my dad come back to life again. So I had to fight that a lot because they were so good representing those characters. And Gabe too, you know, I gave Gabe a lot of access to home movies, family movies of myself and my parents. So he kind of was really a member of the family by the time we shot the movie.
One last question. I want a sequel now. I think people always ask about sequels. Yeah. If you were to film a sequel, what stage of your life or filmmaking career do you think would make the most interesting story to follow this one up?
You know something, I haven't thought about that because there was so much completion of a kind of personal family mission I had in telling the story. So I haven't really given any thought to how I would ever continue the story because this whole experience has really been cathartic for me and it's really filled me up, and I can't imagine what that would be.
In this family, it's the scientists versus the artists. Sammy's on my team, takes after me.
Congratulations to the both of you on an extraordinary movie.
Thanks.
Curious for both of you, what was sort of the most important conversation or bit of information that Stephen imparted to you about this relationship between these two people and their characters that was sort of the most meaningful or sort of your way in?
I always think about the first time that we spoke, the first Zoom that we had, and I think for both Paul and I, it felt really momentous to just even be on a screen with this man, but then so immediately he dispels any nervousness that you might have because he's so open-handed with his life, with his recollections, with the people that he loved, and so we just understood that we were being handed something incredibly precious.
And I think we were riding some wave of memory and learning and searching from him, and he was again so open and vulnerable with us that we just all kind of tried to surf that together and bring it to ultimately Bert and Mitzi, who are a version of Arnold and Leah.
I want to talk to you about the dancing scene. It was that's sort of the moment that, you talk about a character-defining moment or a moment that defines a film, and I really think that was so beautiful, and I know that maybe you said that was the bonding moment for all of you on set, that camping scene really gelled things, but was that improvised? Was that choreographed? Did he let you be free? How did that scene happen for you?
Both, really. It was both. It was, I think, I always feel like you have to build something and understand how it's made before you can sort of take it apart and find a lot of freedom in it. So there was a dance that was built and practiced, and then there was also just the moment and what it was, what it inspired.
You're also playing an artist. She was a true artist. So what sort of yourself, being an artist yourself, sort of gave way, or what sort of kinship did you feel with her?
So much, and it sort of continues to reveal itself, honestly. Like, I continue to be moved by this woman who was an artist and who lived her life and who raised her children as though it was art itself. And I think that's something that always really moved me about the script, is the creativity that was that was everywhere in their childhood. You watch these home movies and you see these photos and you see the way that they lived, and it was a work of art. And it gave way to these 4 children who are all who carry that spirit. Not just Stephen, his 3 sisters also have that spirit, that lust for life that their mother and father gave them.
Paul, for you, I know you talked a little bit about in the past that there were 3 Stephens on set. There was Gabriel, and then there was Stephen now, and sort of the young Stephen that came out. Can you talk a little bit about how that younger Stephen, what you witnessed and
Well, I think that the camping sequence was, 3 days, and that is where I personally really felt everything sort of congeal, and part of that was seeing Stephen, our leader, one of the great film artists of all time, sort of go through his own big experience and really share that with us, which again opened the door for everybody to just bring everything they had. But yes, him and Tony wrote it from the point of view of a child, right? Stephen's, and then he's an adult man who's lived a life, and then he's the filmmaker and the director trying to tell that story. So it was really interesting to watch him sort of go through all those different parts of himself.
I know the opening of this, The Greatest Show on Earth, being that film that sort of lit Stephen's soul on fire to want to be a filmmaker, even though he didn't know it at the time. What was the film for each of you, the first movie that you saw as a child that sort of lit your soul on fire in terms of, maybe I want to be an artist myself?
I don't know if it necessarily made me think that I wanted to be an artist, but it was maybe the first thing that I recognized as art was The Sound of Music. We didn't really watch a lot. We watched cartoons and, sitcoms and stuff, and we watched The Sound of Music so many times, and it moved me.
Being honest, I think singing was actually probably the vessel that got to the acting, actually, too. Like Sound of Music, but yeah, singing as a kid is such a beautiful expression, and I think that's sort of what ended up.
Well, it's ecstatic. It's like when you can't speak, you sing, and that, like the resonance of that and the movement of that, like sort of from inside of you to projected outside of you is like an artistic trajectory. So that movie, yeah, I guess like really all those old musicals, I think, made me feel stirred.
You just love something, you also have to take care of it. It's more important than your hobby.
Can you stop calling it a hobby?
I'm sure you had a lot of conversations with Steven. He probably gave you a list of films to watch. You got to watch some of his early films. But what was the most meaningful conversation or sort of like clue in where you sort of thought, oh, I got it. I got this. I have this character. Aside from your brilliant audition.
The big aha moment was when I felt that I got the smile down. I think that was really the big thing where I could look in the mirror and feel like another person. And because Steven and I had been Zooming for weeks and I'd been getting to know him and about his life and his family and the script and this character, and I felt I'd been doing all that, but I really felt like another person when I could do that.
How long did that take? Did you practice in the mirror?
It took a few days.
Yeah.
In the mirror for a few hours. I just watch a lot of his interviews and photos of him, and it was just that.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. And the posture, I noticed. Like, was that something you worked on?
Well, I got to watch a lot of his home movies of him and his family, and I could see how he walked as a kid back then. He was very erect, and he led with his chest. And it's actually kind of like, it reminds me of old like theater camps learning how to walk on stage, because back then when he's a kid and you know he's so stiff and upright, and his energy is all here, and this is how he leads, out of this false confidence of that's how you should lead back when he was that age. But now, 60 years later, he still has great posture, but all of his energy is in his hips. It's much more grounded and real and an actual like authentic confidence that you could just see him walk. It's you know, like through set, and he has his entourage of security, and he has his head down, and he's thinking, and he has a cigar in his hand, but he's just like swaying, walking by. So that was really cool.
Wow. Did he give you a camera? Was there something about like you got to learn a little bit about being, because I imagine you would want to know how to be a director to play an aspiring director.
Well, this character is just he just knows what looks good in a camera. He's not the movies he's making. It's
he's still learning.
He's still learning, and so he's not running a set. He has a camera and he has his friends, and which I could get to see with him and Christy and Tony and Janish at times, because you have this. There's almost this assumption that huge blockbuster hits or huge movies are a bunch of people around a table in suits, like, how do we, do this? But with him, it's him and his friends with a camera, but just playing and having fun, and that was super great to watch.
If there was a film, I know your character in the film, Sammy, sneaks onto a few sets. If there was a set of Steven's from one of his previous movies that you could have snuck on and been a fly on the wall and sort of watch being made, what would be the movie? It
would have to be, it has to be Jaws. If I was a fly on the wall and nobody knew I was there, I would want to see the people Steven confides his fear of the shark not working. I'd want to see those moments, because he's such a great leader on set, and he's, he doesn't, he steers the boat, and everybody feels very safe that everything's working. And I know that was a big struggle for him to do on Jaws, but I'd love to see those conversations he has where he's just venting.
You stop making movies, it'll break your mother's heart.
I don't know what to do anymore.
You do what your heart says you have to.
So what is this I hear about you? So you snuck onto set 10 days early just to sort of take away the sort of mystique of working with Steven and the nerves. So tell me about showing up on set early. Did anybody sort of say, what are you doing here?
No, not at all. I didn't seek on. And I told him from the first, when I came up in a very insulated filmmaking environment where I worked with a lot of the same people throughout a lot of my career, and and we worked it, and what I've learned, it was a pretty specific way. So a lot of my questions to him when we first talked were like, how do you work? Like, how do you make a movie? Do you give a lot of direction, not a lot of direction? Do a lot of takes, not a lot of takes? You know, I have a friend who worked with Clint Eastwood, and they do one take, and it's like, oh, that's a whole other way of working, you know? And so I wanted to see, I wanted to just demystify the process, and I was like, I think I'll perform better for you if I can be there a lot and just see how everything goes. So by the time I'm filming, it's not like I'm both nervous about my performance and struggling to comprehend kind of how you work. So, and as a film fan, it's just like if you have an opportunity to be on a Steven Spielberg set, you take it, and you take it as much as you can, and you don't leave, and you sit as close to him as you can, and you watch him and you listen to him. And that was something I just wasn't going to pass up either. So it was like, and he was thrilled to have me there and always seemed happy that I was there. And so it was like, it was a beautiful, beautiful experience.
I know. I heard that you like brought War of the Worlds, and you were like, how did you shoot this? How did you shoot that? Please give me one little secret or one little tip about Steven Spielberg as a filmmaker that you learned that you would be willing to share.
He's always like drawing his own little storyboards on which is not something a lot of people do. Little scribbles all the time, and then you look at them, they really is like the shots as we're doing it, and they're it looks like a child drew them for the most part, but they somehow translate into some iconic filmmaking.
Does it change the way, now that you've worked with him, does it change the way you go back and watch his films? When you watch his other films, where you sort of see it through a different lens?
I think one of the great things about this movie, honestly, is it will do that for everyone. I think like when you understand the person who made so many iconic works of art, it gives those works of art an entirely new meaning, and you understand why they did what they did in a new way and why they made the choices they made. And when it's someone as influential as him, what's interesting is you start to see like, oh, these things that affected him affected everyone, including you, the viewer, because we live in a culture that has been shaped by him and his sensibilities, you know? And so it's really interesting to see, you know, the kind of ripple effect of like, oh, if that hadn't happened to him, then like action movies wouldn't be as popular as they are today. You know, it's like, yeah, it's really interesting.
I want to talk about the camping scene and sort of filming those scenes with Michelle that were supposed to be those scenes that Steven was taking as a filmmaker that he then pieced together later and put together a secret that he unfolded. Like when you were shooting those scenes with Michelle, sort of like the dip when you sort of see your faces, how subtle did you have to be, or how many times did you sort of have to shoot those scenes to sort of get that essence of what Steven was going for?
Steven was operating the camera himself in a lot of the 8mm footage, which was also kind of surreal. So he kind of he seemed to know very specifically what he wanted. I don't remember doing like a ton of takes of it. Like I think it seemed to go pretty smoothly and pretty fast. It was really interesting always seeing him back there actually filming it. And sometimes they do it with Mitch, a camera operator, but those were very surreal moments at times, because it really did sometimes feel like we were just walking around the woods with Steven Spielberg
making a whole movie,
filming us on a little home video camera. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. If you were to be Steven's character in this film, sneaks onto a lot of movie sets.
Yeah.
If you could sneak onto any of Steven's former movies and be a fly on the wall, which one would you choose?
That's a tough one. Maybe one of the Indiana Jones movies. I think those seem technically impressive and would have been incredible to see. The sets are humongous. There's a lot of miniature. I love miniature work. I'm very fascinated with miniatures. I know they use a lot of miniatures in those, especially in Temple of Doom. A lot of that, the little mining cart race was done with miniatures. So yeah, I would have gone and watched that.
It's probably inspired by the train.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. It's all coming together now once you've seen this movie. In getting sort of Benny down, what sort of was the most meaningful conversation you had with Steven in terms of knowing who he was? What did he tell you about his relationship to the Fabelmans or his sort of essence?
Everyone I talked to who knew Uncle Bernie, as he was known, the real character is Bernie, and my character is Benny. But the real guy was Uncle Bernie. And everyone who knew him, who my character is very much inspired by, yeah, they would kind of light up, and they'd be, he was so funny and so fun, so nice, so lovely, which very charismatic, which is which is like a tall order. Every time I heard that, I'm like, oh God, like, because I'm none of those things.
I beg to differ, Seth.
But it was, yeah, and so I really got that this guy needed to be someone who, given what happens in the film, you liked him and you were supportive of what happened in the film. You understood that he was a good guy, that he was a genuinely fun, loving guy, because that is, from like a story standpoint, actually very like integral to why I think you are happy kind of with what happens in the film and why it's a happy movie ultimately and not a sad movie, you know? And I think like, so I understood honestly from like a plot mechanic standpoint what the character had to be in order to make the movie function. And so those were the conversations, is him just really explaining like, yeah, like the character has to be lovable, fun, charismatic, loose, light, charming, energetic. Which honestly, that was, I understood it. I understood the assignment, as they say, and so I just had to try to do it, which is much harder than understanding it.
You definitely understood the assignment, and you nailed it. I want to talk a little bit about the ensemble aspect of this film.
Yeah.
The fact that you're working with Michelle and Paul, and I think it was you and maybe Paul said that the camping sequences were really where it really gelled. Can you sort of describe that sense of camaraderie and that ensemble feel, because it really is, they're great performances by everybody.
Yeah, it really, and yeah, the girls and Gabe, it's something that like I really like as an actor, is like when you feel like you're a part of a team. I'm not a musician, it's but what I assume what it feels like to be in a band, a good band, where you feel that maybe even though if you're not like leading the charge in that moment, you're playing a role that's keeping the whole thing afloat, and it's very validating. You support other people and then they support you, and I was very nervous when I got cast, but honestly, one of the first major alleviations of those nerves was hearing that they cast Michelle and Paul, because I had made a movie with Michelle before, and she's like truly like a freakishly good actor, like, and it makes it really easy when you're working with someone who's that good. Like, they do a lot of the work, like, and I honestly, there is some like very nuanced scenes involving my character and that character, and as soon as I was nervous about it, and then as soon as I heard it was her, I was like, it'll be fine. Like, we'll get them. It'll be easy. Like, and it will largely be because she's so good.
One last quick question. A lot of the theme of this film is about becoming an artist and sort of, what is expected of you in your life versus what you become. What sort of gave you, Seth, the gestalt to become an artist?
My parents were always very supportive, and they really treated it seriously when I wanted to do comedy and act and make movies. Like I started doing comedy when I was like 13 years old, and my mother drove me to like every comedy performance I ever did, and would hang out and became friends with the comedians and would help facilitate me doing comedy, They signed me up for a workshop. That's like the first thing I ever really did, that kind of made me start writing comedy when I was like 12 or 13, So they were very supportive, and really, conversely, my writing partner, Evan, his parents were very unsupportive. And I really see, like, my parents were really doing the heavy lifting for both of, like if my parents were also unsupportive, we probably would have stopped, because I think there's only so much discouragement that people can take, and it was really, I really look back and I thank God they were so supportive.
She should have been a concert piano player. What she got in her heart is what you got.
Family, art. It'll tear you in two.
Congratulations. The film, your performance is incredible. I'm wondering for you, you play somebody that gives Gabriel's character advice about being fearless and going into show business. And I know that you originally were going to be an engineer before you became an actor. Did somebody give you that advice, or what gave you the gestalt to become an artist?
The same thing the character I play did to him. He said, art is a drug within him. And he knew that the kid had the same drug. And that he would never be able to kill that instinct in himself. He will suffer, but he'll suffer, but that's what's going to happen, because you can't kill it, because it's going to make you who you are. You're not going to be able to deny it. It's one of those things. The word is art. And if you want to say it's about acting, it's about painting, it's about music, that's the one. And that's the job that I had as an actor doing this character to bring forth. It was written that art is the true center of the scene, okay? It's going to hopefully carries on through the movie in various ways. But this guy's going to be out of bounds and from somewhere, right? I didn't say this to Stephen. I said, it seems like an oracle has somehow come into this room. And my confusion was, I am looking like I'm destroying a boy, you know?
Or making his life.
That's right. Because the only thing he ever told me was it changed his life. The man changed his life. And that was the whole reason to have the scene. It was a moment in a man's life is what, of course, the movie is, right?
Yeah.
The moments of his life. This was one which changed, because he wasn't going to do this anymore. He was going to, and this guy came at the right time and told him, in effect, he will suffer and has to.
You just inspired me. I'm going to change my life now. One thing I do know is that you actually directed Stephen. In one of the scenes, Stephen talked about how you said, no, the camera should be over here, and he took your advice.
No, there was a moment, because one of the most important things in the movies is that Stephen's mother played the piano, and she should have been a concert pianist, but she didn't. She couldn't. Family, in a way, forced her not to do the thing that Art said to do, okay? So this guy, because he had to do it himself and get out and move and leave his family to do it, recognized that she didn't do it. So he's trying to tell her son, you know, she should have done it. I was angry. Should have done it. Got to choose an emotion, right? What is it? If I'm going to come across to you by telling you how important this is to you, and your mother didn't do it, you know, you got a choice. Feeling sorry for her, or not blaming her, or whatever. No.
So you changed. How did you change the scene then? Like, how did you change?
Oh, well, no. So he said. So I knew she was a pianist, a really good one, and she plays in the movie. So it was an important thing in Stephen's life that this mother of his was so good. In our scene, we hear the piano playing. She's playing down the hall. She's playing in the living room. And he said, do you want to hear it? I said, yeah, so you give me an earpiece. So I can listen to the music because I'm about to say, shh, wait a minute, right? And the scene was, I would just say, wait a minute, and stand there and listen. And finally, I thought, oh man, this is too good. This is much too good. This is gonna affect me, and how I know. Open the door, look out, and because it's coming from down the hall. And so I said, could you just do a sing along? Maybe you open the door and just see me listening to it? Because I said, wait a minute, oh, shh, right? He said, yeah.
And it's in the movie.
Yeah. And then in about 5 seconds, the cameraman, he said, can we put a camera out there? Okay, can we light it? Yeah, okay, yes.
And you're like, congratulations, Stephen, I've just directed your
No, I think he would have done it. I think he would have come around to do it. It's just that I wasn't sure, you know, that if you link in with the kind of guy he is, if you link in with his kind of direction, which is don't pay attention with anything else except what we're doing, you know, about what you're saying and the effect on the other actor, you have to be very aware about what's happening to you. You know, you're not just an implement in a room. I wasn't an oracle. I didn't come from nowhere. So here comes reality, two people. And I had to know the effect that I was having on this guy. The whole scene is he's trying to have a great effect, historic effect, right? That's why it's in the movie. And so that was my obligation. I kept thinking, how do we make this happen? How am I going to change this guy? Uncle comes from nowhere. I think we all had one. When the family got in trouble, my mother's brother came one time and said, "This is what you're going to do." I said, "What?" He said, No, listen to me. I thought he was an intruder, my mother's brother, in my real life.
Wow.
So, yeah, there's always one of those guys.
I wanted to ask you, Stephen, a young Stephen in this film, one of the opening scenes in the film sees the greatest show on earth, and it sets his soul on fire and changes the course of his life. What was that movie for you?
Oh, The Greatest Show on Earth?
No, what was the movie for you that you saw when you were young that set your soul on fire and made you want to be an actor?
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to go back too long. To movies that I probably didn't even like later, because I watched the acting. You know what I'm saying? And I watched TCM a lot, and it takes me back to all the movies that I've seen in the 40s and 50s, because I'm a guy from the 50s, and they of course were my inspiration and all this kind of stuff. And then I watch the movies and I go like this, ooh, that's not acting.
I hate asking this, but do you ever do
You know
it with
what I'm
yourself?
saying?
Do you ever do it with your own films? Like, do you ever watch yourself, or do you look and do you critique yourself?
Yeah. It's you got to be me. The believability part is that I know when you should believe me and when you should question it. All right. I think every actor could say that, but they probably won't. No, it's tough. Some people have a very tough time watching themselves in the movies for their own reasons. Michelle Williams won't watch her movies.
Wow.
Okay, I understand that. Katharine Hepburn wouldn't watch her own movies. Well, I don't know whether they have. It makes them self-conscious when they have to do another one, or to think about what they've done and to change it in their mind. To me, I can understand someone saying, "Oh, damn! I wish I would have done what the better shot." Yeah, that's the bad part about movies. In plays, you can change it every day. Okay, in movies, you can't. They go that, and you go, "Oh, which one are you going to use?" Never mind, and then you see it, and you might remember a better shot. This one I didn't. This one I knew that every single shot was very acceptable to Stephen.
Well, I know.
So
I
knew I was on
heard
the
he
right
didn't
track.
give you any notes. Like he
No.
kind of,
No.
you did a scene and he just kind of looked at you.
Yeah, I was, I don't know, ringing the right bells, and but not by myself. There's the guy. I'm and sneakily I'm going like this. Is that right? Is that good? Yeah.
You mean Stephen?
Yeah.
Oh, you were.
And waves me off.
He just left
Goes
you
on to
alone.
something else. Goes on to the kid. Goes on to the scenery. Goes on to what the object he was going to shoot. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll walk with that. In other words, we're present tense all the time. Wow. We're not going to go over anything. We're not going to reshoot anything. We're not going to say I got a better idea. He knows what he's going to shoot.
Yeah.
But this is different. This is a bio. I mean, this is his life.
Yeah, it's different.
It's not a bio. It's an inspired lifetime of memory as if played in the present.
Did you, the scene where you're getting into the car and you're saying goodbye, I'll never forget that look or that gesture. Do you remember that?
Interestingly enough, we shot that first. I had no idea what I was going to do to make that happen. I'm not kidding. I didn't know what we had to do, because I guess it was location or something like that, and they were ready for location, exterior of the house. And so when we did it, I had read the script by then, but we never discussed anything about the actual scene that I was going to have with the kid finally. All we knew was that was the result. And you play a result first. You go, Okay. I was guessing. I was really guessing about what? How did I leave these people? Well, they're all, because when I saw it, they were scared to begin with. They were frightened of what was going to happen because of something in the past that I did to her mother, And they're all standing there, almost saying, "Isn't he something?"